Hey there, it's Ryan coming to you from my kid's room. For those of you watching on video, school is out for the day and there's lots of putting together of puzzles going on where I normally record these intros. That said, do you remember the show back in the 90s, The Nanny? Did you know that the actress, Fran Drescher, got cancer, overcame it, and now is very active in spreading holistic anti-cancer information? Well, now you do, and if you stick around, you can hear about it from her for yourself. When our son Ryder was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer 11 days before his first birthday, my wife Teddy and I knew we weren't going to leave anything that could get him well on the table. We've worked with countless doctors and health experts, moved away from our family and friends, raised and spent tens of thousands of dollars, even built a non-toxic house in the middle of the woods, all in the name of healing. Today, Ryder is happy and healthy, and we live more fulfilling lives than before the diagnosis. This is a revolution against what causes cancer and disease, and against what people think about how to reverse it. Whether you're actively healing and want to know all your options, keeping it behind you, or making sure cancer never touches your family, this is your revolution. This is the anti-cancer revolution. From integrative, to alternative, to energetic, we walk down all paths of wellness, free of bias. My name is Ryan Sternagel. Enjoy the journey. Yeah, this was a really fun one for me. I'm going to be speaking at Fran's Masterclass Health Summit in Los Angeles on November 2nd and thought it would be fun to have her on to talk about her story as well. Fran's story is definitely one of standing up for yourself and pushing through until you get answers, which I think so many of us really need constant reminding of. I don't want to give it away, but her answers to both what she thinks was the primary driver of the cancer forming and how she keeps it away were both quite interesting and noteworthy, which I'll let you hear for yourself. One note before we get into it, in advance, I'm sorry about the dog. There was apparently some reason it needed to be in the room, and he got a bit excited at one point during the interview, and we were on a tight schedule. I promise it does stop to a large extent after the initial mailman walking by incident or whatever it was. He pipes up every once in a while, but it's tolerable after that. As always, please don't take any of this as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. With that, I will let you get to it and see you back here on the other side. Fran Drescher, thanks so much for coming on the Anti-Cancer Revolution. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. This is, now that I'm doing this, well, I've been doing the show for a while, but just everything we do online, and it's like a lot of the different naturopathic oncologists and health personalities that I was getting advice from, and health tips and that sort of thing, and then I turn around and interview them, and I always say, wow, this is a full circle moment. I'm interviewing, so-and-so. But even more full circle that I would be interviewing Fran Drescher, who I saw on TV, probably early teens. Yeah. And now we're here. So what do you know?
I know, life's funny that way.
Life is funny that way. Yeah, I had no idea that you had gone through cancer and that this was such a big part of what you do with your life now until I had a reason to be searching around about cancer. There's quite a few things I want to ask you about, but you want to let folks know what your cancer story was? And
Well,
I'm particularly interested in everything you went through to get a diagnosis, because we had the same thing.
it took me 2 years and 8 doctors to get a proper diagnosis with uterine cancer. I got in the stirrups more times than Django. And every doctor had a different answer for or solution for my symptoms. I had profound leg pain, and they said, oh, drink gin and tonic before going to bed. And my stool changed, and they said, stop eating so much spinach. And my breasts were hard, and they said, well, you got the breasts of an 18-year-old. And, all the while, I actually had cancer. And then Doctor number 8 said you should have an endometrial biopsy after the hormone replacement therapy she put me on wasn't working and actually started exacerbating my symptoms where I was, bleeding 24/7. And so Doctor number 1 had said I was too young for that test. And I didn't ask her what it was good for because I was just glad to be too young for anything. So that test, actually 3 days later, was the one that showed that I had adenocarcinoma, which is another way of saying uterine cancer. And that was kind of the beginning of the rest of my life and a significant change in how I led my life, because I feel like I got famous, I got cancer, and I lived to talk about it. So it was a radical hysterectomy that became my cure. Even after 2 years, I was still in stage 1, grade 2, because uterine cancer is a very slow growing cancer. But if I had ovarian cancer, I probably wouldn't be sitting here speaking to you today, because that's a far more aggressive cancer. And at the core of the problem, I think that doctors are very busy people, bludgeoned by health insurance companies to go the least expensive route of diagnostic testing. They need to get you in and out quickly because they pay a lot of insurance, malpractice insurance, and so they need to have a significant turnover. And I also think that in spite of the fact that I saw both women and men doctors, if the tests are not really showing anything, then there's this general consensus to talk you out of your symptoms. Yep. And look for the benign problems. To subscribe to the philosophy, if you hear hooves galloping, don't look for zebra, it's probably a horse. But if you happen to be a zebra, you may slip through the cracks, as I did, because uterine cancer typically, or 3 out of 4 women, are either postmenopausal or obese. They're not young and thin as I was, but 25% of them are. So to me, that would warrant taking the endometrial biopsy just to rule it out, because I did have classic uterine cancer symptoms. But for many women with gynecologic cancer, at the earliest and most curable stage, it often mimics far more benign illnesses. So I was thought to have a perimenopausal condition that I didn't have. And the woman with ovarian cancer is often misdiagnosed for irritable bowel syndrome. When I meet a woman that has IBS, I say, honey, I hope that's what you got. But for a moment, step away from your gastroenterologist, go to your gynecologist and rule out ovarian cancer, because if that is what you have, you don't have a moment to lose. It's a very aggressive spreading cancer. So I, in my frustration by the medical community and a feeling of betrayal by my own body, I decided to write a book so what happened to me wouldn't happen to other people. That became the New York Times bestseller, Cancer Schmancer. But when I went on my book tour, I met with tens of thousands of people. And I realized that what happened to me was not unique, but actually quite common. People are very often misdiagnosed and mistreated for a more benign problem. I have a girlfriend right now who is battling non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And for 2 years, her doctor was saying that lump on her neck was nothing. It wasn't changing. It remained small. It seems like it's very benign. And finally, after 2 years, she said, I just want to get it removed. And she was diagnosed with advanced lymphoma. It was a malignant tumor, even though it didn't feel like one and it didn't behave like one. And, this is why it's better to rule something out. It's best if you know what the early warning whispers are of the cancers that may affect you and the tests that are available, because all too often they're not even on the menu at the doctor's office. So you have to know what to ask for. And, the book kind of became the beginning rather than the end of what's now a life mission, because the Cancer Schmancer book morphed into the Cancer Schmancer Movement. It became very clear to me that I was forming a vision in my head of the direction that health has to move in this nation, rated really a very sick nation by the World Health Organization. We're number, I think, 35. And that's pretty pathetic for a country that's a first world nation with as much money as this nation has. So there's something wrong with this picture. And there's something wrong with the way we treat our bodies, the lifestyle that we live. There's a disconnect in how we live to how we feel, when in reality, it's completely impacts the other. How you live equals how you feel. There's no wiggle room there. And that's what people have to kind of get their head behind. They have to start, we at the Cancer Schmancer Movement, or cancerschmancer.org, have a very progressive program called Detox Your Home, because the home is the most toxic place we spend the most time in, and ironically have the most control over. We ask you to take the check, choose, and change challenge. Check labels, choose healthy, organic, eco-friendly products, and become the change you, your family, and the world so desperately needs. You know, what are you, the in, on, and around you, what are you putting in your mouth? All of your food, is it organic, biodynamic? You know, we shouldn't be eating any industrial farm foods. It's full of agrochemicals and hormones and, antibiotics. And the animals are more often fed GMO, grain, and the whole thing is just a complete mess. We have to get back to old school style of eating, supporting the local organic family farmer, and get away from this bill of goods that we've been sold in the 20th century. This mass farming is not helping the planet or you or your family or your pet for that matter. And then what are you putting on you? All of your personal care items. If you're still using toothpaste that says do not swallow or call poison control, step away from that toothpaste, because the mouth is the gateway to so much disease. We should all be going to biologic dentists anyway. Dentists that understand that there is a significant mouth-body connection. And the mouth is not an anomaly. It is part of the whole body. Every tooth is connected to an energy meridian in the body. And, and then all of your personal care items besides oral hygiene. What are you putting on your skin every day? You have to think about things like that. And then what are you cleaning and gardening with? The average woman has exposed herself to 12 to 15 cancer-causing carcinogens before she even leaves the bathroom, before she goes to the refrigerator door, opens it up, and takes out food that's unhealthy, before she goes under the sink to take out some kind of a cleaning product that has such a strong scent in it that it's a carcinogen. So, we really have to think about these things and change the way we are, because, I think that all the woes of the world has one systemic malignancy, and that's greed. So greed, is being supported by mindless consumerism. So I'm trying to wake up, shake up, and educate the public into realizing that you are enabling these sociopaths, these manufacturers that don't care about you or the planet. All they care about is the almighty dollar, which is really the wrong way to think about why you're here on this earth and what you're supposed to be accomplishing. But that's a whole nother story. in truth, if we make mindful choices at the market, we can actually dictate more responsible manufacturing trends. And we can also make it clear, regardless of what regulations are legislated or who happens to be in the White House, what we buy and what we don't buy becomes not only our vote, but also our protest.
Yeah, it's you said so many things that I want to chime in and agree with you on there. Just as far as what you just said lastly was very profound. It really doesn't matter who's in the White House, and as far as marching on Washington and all this stuff. I mean, that's great, but it's really just kind of like, would you please change rather than just being the change within yourself and making that happen. And
That's the thing people don't realize. Change yourself.
yeah.
It's very overwhelming to think about everything that's wrong with the world and all the people that are brain dead to it. But change yourself, and then each one teach one. And you will see a change occur, because it only takes 10% of a population to shift a paradigm. But it's very challenging to change yourself, to really see how many opportunities each and every day are presented to you to take the high road, to become a more refined version of yourself. When I looked at those kids marching all over the world, I thought to myself, I bet you there were millions of single-use plastic water bottles that were thrown away at all of those events, because those kids are trying to make a point, but not realizing that they themselves are driving global warming with mindless consumerism. And we actually at cancerschmancer.org, we produced a really beautiful, kid-friendly movie starring Jamie Foxx and myself and Jeff Bridges and a bunch of kids. It's an education video, and it's called Be the Change. And it speaks to this specifically, to empower kids into realizing that they are a multi-billion-dollar demographic. Now, they don't vote and they don't pay taxes, so they don't wield a whole lot of influence in Washington. But what they buy and what they don't buy is their vote and their protest. And if everybody stopped drinking cola today, they'd stop making it tomorrow that fast, because the bottom line is the bottom line. So kids can make a huge change, even more significant than marching, although that's great too. It got a lot of public attention, but it has to be married up with behavior modification.
I would put the greed is, it's very powerful. I've been thinking about this a lot lately myself. My thing is, I think it's fear. I think fear is fear, and even you could even bring greed down to fear, like the fear of not having enough, or just being afraid that, I think a lot of these sociopaths, like deep inside, really hate themselves and are scared to be exposed, so they keep wanting more and more to, like, I don't know. It's and then I think we all go along with what they're putting out there, because now we're afraid of being different, or afraid of losing our job for speaking out, or whatever the case may be. But it's
a lot of people also were brainwashed with the propaganda that stuff is more important than compassion, kindness, spirituality, being an environmentalist, being a naturalist, being a lover of life. Making money and having stuff needs to be reprioritized.
Yeah, and a cancer diagnosis will do a very good job of reprioritizing for you things quickly in a hurry. I was addicted to the news. I was always checking the Drudge Report and stuff like that. And I think like a year after my son was diagnosed, I went to check that app. Like, I'll see what's going on in the world. And the app didn't even work anymore. I was like, I really didn't care anyway. I just go a while longer without finding out. I'm curious. So now you put on, you put on this, what is it? The health masterclass, which
Health Summit.
that's coming up November 2nd.
Second, which is our first time we're doing it on a Saturday, and we're hoping it'll make it easier for a lot more people to attend who otherwise would have to be at work, as well as watch it. It's going to live stream free around the world if you're unable to attend and support the organization and meet all of the speakers and myself in person.
Pretty much anyone that I look up to in the health world has presented at your masterclass, and now what do you know? I'm going to be speaking there. It's a big honor. I'm curious, after interviewing all these people and really diving into cancer, do you look back at your life pre-diagnosis? Is there anything in particular that you look at and say that was probably driving the cancer bus more than everything else even?
Well, I was raped at gunpoint by a man on parole, and who I didn't know, and I didn't really deal with it in the way that I have subsequent to, like maybe 10 years later, I actually started to deal with the pain that I was left with, the emotional scars. At the time that it happened, I was still in my kind of mindset that I'll just carry on and get back to my life. But, unless you allow yourself to feel your pain, it goes somewhere. And I do believe that is true, and that was a contributor to, my uterine cancer. I mean, it's almost poetic that I would end up with a gynecologic cancer after being, raped and not dealing with the pain that experience caused me. So that's definitely one element. I also grew up hearing from my mom sharing the story of when I was born, and she almost hemorrhaged to death because I was so fat. And I don't know why this was a necessary story for her to share with me repeatedly throughout my childhood. Other mothers tell their daughters it was the most beautiful day of their lives, but I conjured up imagery of, blood and chaos in the delivery room, and hurting my mom, and feeling a lot of guilt about that. And so, I think that was also something that I hadn't fully dealt with in terms of how it impacted me and the guilt that I felt as a consequence of her sharing that story. And I think that that's also probably why for most of my early adult life, I didn't really have a desire to have a baby. And then when I finally did have the desire, which was, I was already like 39, I was, or 40, I was being told that, I knew there was something wrong with me. And I was being convinced that I had like 5 minutes of fertility left. But in fact, what I eventually learned was I had cancer and I would need a radical hysterectomy. So any hope of ever having a child, could not be realized in the natural sense. And so it's kind of a perfect storm. And I was under a tremendous amount of stress doing the nanny, and then my marriage started to break apart, and it was a painful divorce. It was hard for me to want out of the marriage and do something that was against what my husband wanted and was causing him a great deal of pain. I was never one to do anything for myself if it meant, hurting someone else. I had to learn how to put myself into the equation and do what was best for me. And so there were a lot of things that I think contributed to why I ended up getting uterine cancer. But then there's also the possibility that there's a grand scheme to it all. And it happened, and maybe it happened for the purpose of me using my celebrity to get out there and really spread the word about what cancerschmancer.org does and how people have to transform from patient into medical consumer, how they have to change the way they think about their lifestyle, and how they have to learn how to balance their lives. Because if you're not really consciously trying to balance mind, body, and spirit every single day, you're going to fall out of balance. And being out of balance makes you susceptible to dis-ease. And I think that that's a very important thing that we all have to look at, that we are the thermostat for our own body's well-being. And we know when we're stressing, we know when we've been exposed to someone that's sick and contagious, and we have to be the thermostat and say, okay, I've got to amp up on my antioxidants. I've got to, take a walk around the block because I'm too stressed. And if I'm stressing, I'm going to compromise my immune system. And then I'm going to be more susceptible to getting sick. So it's a whole new style of thinking about ourselves, how we play a role in our own health and well-being, and how we contribute to our dis-ease or our good health.
Well, you seem very much at ease now, so I'm glad for that. It's funny you mentioned the grand scheme thing, and if this could have all been leading up to, I wrestle with that myself a lot, because Teddy and I both look at our lives leading up to the diagnosis, and just how many things lined up perfectly for us to handle it the way we did, and then all these things that kind of lined up afterwards to put us in the spotlight, sort of thing, and like, was that supposed to happen? But then on the other hand, free will is a very real thing. The very real thing. There are laws of the universe, of course, cause and effect, and kind of you reap what you sow kind of stuff. But then how does that match up with free will? And so, yeah, and then, on top of it all, Ryder, our son, is turning out to be a very, not just that he survived cancer, but a very special little boy, and a lot of very unique gifts that he gets called an old soul all the time by people that are inclined to make that sort of comment. So it's a struggle for sure. But and just going back to, went through your book, and I saw that about the rape, but I didn't put it together that it was a rape leading up to that cancer in that area. That is really profound, and you hear about stuff like that all the time. And I would be inclined to say that's not a coincidence. You put it so eloquently in terms of dealing with your pain, and just really you have to feel that to get over it and all that sort of thing. I always ask people about this, because it's something doctors will speak to a lot, but then as far as the practical how-to stuff, it's they fall a little short. The need to address the emotions and everything. Is there just anything that really helped you? I don't know if it was a book or a program or just a mantra or whatever, but just anything that kind of helped you deal with your stuff that you knew you needed to deal with.
Well, I do consider myself Buddhist now. I find that a very wonderful daily practice. It's a kind of lifestyle philosophy. It's not a religion, but it can complement any religion. And it reminds you how to prioritize and what's important, and to try and be present in your life. And I think that that's a very key thing, because when you have been in situations that pull you down to the depths of despair, and you really, it's hard to imagine yourself ever being happy again. You get into your head sometimes. You start to think about ruminating about what happened. And I think that what we all have to practice when we're stuck in our head, even if you haven't been through a crisis, is to, as soon as you realize, oh my God, where have I been? I've been in my head this whole time, which means you're not really present in your own life. And I think one of the goals and objectives of this journey is to be present in your own life. And so once you notice that you've been lost in your head somewhere, then start looking at the mundane around you with wide-eyed wonder. The wide-eyed wonder of a child seeing something for the first time, whether it be the way a wall and a ceiling joined together in a corner of a room that you've never noticed, a simple, piece of bric-a-brac on your nightstand that you never notice anymore. Whatever it may be, look at it with wide-eyed wonder, and that will bring you right into the present. And the more you can do that throughout the day, the more your life will be a meditation. And when I say your life will be a meditation, you will be striving towards being present in your own life. And the upside of that is that you'll slow down your life because you won't be lost in thought. You'll be actually here, looking around and doing what you're doing in the moment. People often said to me when I was performing on Broadway, how do you do the same thing every single night? And I always said, I look at it as a meditation because it's so easy to be distracted in normal life. You get into your head, you're driving, you're not even thinking about what's in front of you, you're thinking about what's in your head. And, but when you're on the stage and you're doing a play, if you start thinking about other stuff, you're going to go up on your lines. And you can't do that. You have to be present. You have to listen to what the other actor is saying, and then you have to respond. And you have to be right there in the moment, like you're hearing it for the first time. And so I thought of that as a meditation. I like cooking. I like distance walking. I like arranging flowers. I like feeding wild birds and, taking care of my pets. And all of these things give me a sense of groundedness that I think also is very important. Feeling grounded with the earth is an important part of good health, I think.
That's incredible. That really is. When you start learning meditation, again, something that everyone says is important, but then it's like, well, how do you actually do it? That's a whole other thing. But one of the big things that gets taught, I guess, is just being the observer, like observing your thoughts and being observant of what's going on in your body and that sort of thing. But
exactly, being present is a meditation.
Yeah, but what you just said about just noticing the crack in the wall or something sitting on your desk or whatever, that almost sounds like kind of a back end hack to get to the observing the inner terrain and what's going on inside of you. Just having that, I already started, my mind started going to things that I'm going to be more observant of when I get home and everything. But it's yeah, because if you can get deep within like that and just being very observant, then I suppose you could probably know what's going on with your body, maybe tap into what you need, what you don't need, all that sort of thing.
I think a lot of people are intimidated by meditation. They feel like they can't calm their brain. They don't want to sit there. It's just, they can't stop thinking. And it's not really about stopping thinking. The whole point of trying to train your brain to be more single-minded instead of all over the map is because then you are present. So when you always make a point of looking at everything, you know, you're in the room, you've maybe sat in this room a million times, but look at it, really look at it. Look at everything. Then you're meditating.
I love it. I love it. Anything else that sticks out to you is something that's big in your, I mean, you've completely overhauled your life. Clearly, you've got you're after our own heart. You get the detox your home thing right on your website. That's the first thing that pops up on our website is here's how to detox your. The same thing with you. I love that. But yeah, just anything in particular that stands out to you in terms of your own personal, how you are keeping cancer away for the rest of your life that you'd like to share with folks who maybe
Well, I definitely think food is medicine, but it can also be your ruin if you're eating the wrong foods. And I think that we have to stop supporting industrial farms. They're not serving us well. And I think we have to start thinking about plastic overuse. And I think it's imperative that we clean up our homes and we think about Wi-Fi and electromagnetic fields as something that also is a disruptor to our natural energy field, which, by the way, is in complete harmony with the natural world and absolute disharmony with the electronic world. And
that's why our house is in the middle of the woods.
We can't let 5G into our neighborhood. And really, I installed a switch next to my bed so I can turn my Wi-Fi off at night. And if I want to watch Netflix on my smart TV, that's plugged into an old school Ethernet. It's not dependent on Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is something that's a newly introduced phenomenon. It's less than 20 years old. And we really don't know what the long-term impact is on ourselves as well as the environment. But we are noticing a decline in bee population. It could be because of agrochemicals. It could be because of electromagnetic fields. It could be a cocktail of all of the above. But we have to start looking at that. And we may not be able to wait for legislation to catch up with consciousness. We just have to stop buying it. And if we stop buying it, they'll go out of business. At the end of the day, manufacturers don't want to kill us. They want to sell us. But they'll sell us anything that we're willing to buy, which right now is anything. And I find a lot of big business manufacturers, you watch their commercials and you could just tell who psychologically they're appealing to and what their message is. And, I find it extremely, egregious that anybody would try and coerce a young person, a preteen or a teenager, into using a product that they know is not healthy for the sake of profit. It's unconscionable, and we have to stop them. And the only way to do it is to just stop enabling them with mindless consumerism that I could see.
Indeed. You should go a step further and just hardwire your whole house. Sweet, it's not as big of a chore as you'd think. And then you don't have to have Wi-Fi at any time.
With the Ethernet?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that. Oh, you mean, but what does your phone do?
No, I'm saying you said you turn your Wi-Fi off at night. I'm saying
Right.
just wherever you need a connection in your house, just run an Ethernet cable to it.
Right, but what do you, I don't get great cell service out here. How do you deal with that?
Well, your cell service is, so you're using Wi-Fi for your cell phone?
Yeah, I mean, I tried this morning. I hadn't turned the button back on, and it came up no service. It's
Interesting.
really, and I have landlines for that reason. And
Yeah.
by the way, it for any of your viewers who do have landlines, cordless phones
Cordless. Yeah.
are more dangerous, more radiation than even cell phones. So I got rid of all my cordless phones, and I have these old school landlines with these long, obnoxious cords that are always getting tangled. It's a pain in the butt, but in the long run, I'm going to be healthier for it.
Very worth it. Much worth it. Fran, this has been great. I know you got to run. Do you yeah, you want to let folks know where we mentioned Cancer Schmancer, but
Yeah,
just
go to cancerschmancer.org. That's cancer, SCHMANCER.org. And first of all, join. It's free, and you'll find out everything that we're doing. Plus, you'll get a lot of amazing, helpful tips that you might not otherwise get. And come to our Masterclass Health Summit at the beautiful Dorothy Chandler Pavilion here at the Los Angeles Music Center on November 2nd, which is a Saturday. And we're going to have phenomenal speakers. We always do. And it's going to be served with organic lunch because we walk the talk. And if you can't come, then you can always live stream it. But if you come, you'll get to meet me and the other speakers, and you'll be one of them.
me being one of them, and I look forward to the organic lunch. It's like my favorite part about legit health conferences anyway,
Exactly.
is
I brought
I
that.
can actually be out and about and eat something. Yeah.
I spoke at, Cal Jam. And I said to the guy that does that, why do you sell that bad food at the place? And he said, well, the private dinner is organic. And I said, yeah, but
Private dinner.
well, the venue forces you to use their concession stands.
Mm.
And I said, well, then you can't go to that venue.
Get a new venue. Yeah, that's it.
Exactly.
I've never been to Cal Jam before, but that's
You
interesting.
can't,
Yeah.
you got to walk the talk. I turned down $500,000 for a KFC commercial. And believe me, I could
Glad
have
you
used
did.
that money. But who am I if not my word? Again, it's like, it can't just be about money or, you gotta just walk the talk. And it's not always easy. Sometimes it's very hard, but we have to all try our best. And while we're here, we're always going to be presented with new opportunities to keep, you know, to keep improving along our journey of self-refinement, which is what I think this ride is about.
It may well just be. Yeah, and I'm glad you put it like that. I mean, walking the talk is even, it's the best thing to do for your health at all times. Not, I mean,
That's
I
right.
believe, yeah, Chris Warwick, he was at your event last year, I
Yes.
want to say. Yeah, it's one of his taglines is going 100% is easy, 99% is where it gets tough, because then you're always having to make decisions on, should I do the right thing this time, or, will I let myself off the hook this time? But if your motto is I'm always going to do the right thing, then you're always going to do the right thing for your health, and that's going to give you the best chances there, and you're going to minimize internal conflict, which leads to stress and blah blah blah. So yeah.
Yeah, that's all. That's great. But I also say don't make the perfect the enemy of the good. Just freaking start.
Yeah.
And every day, and it can be fun for you and your whole family. Just keep, life is going to present itself each and every day. And you may say, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Whether it be something that's doing something unhealthy or doing something unkind, or doing something that's lacking of compassion, or doing something that's less than generous. And, to err is human, but you're going to be faced with another opportunity. So just say to yourself, okay, I acknowledge this. I I could do better. And when the universe presents it again, I will.
Oh, the places you'll go. I don't know why that just popped into my mind. That's my kids are obsessed with that book right now.
Oh, good for them. I I wrote a children's book called Being Wendy. I'll I'll bring one for your kids when I see you.
Please do. I look forward to it.
Yeah, it's really it's a wonderful story.
That's a good place to wrap it up.
Okay.
Fran
Well,
Drescher,
thank
thanks.
you.
Thanks so much for coming on the Anti-Cancer Revolution.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me and supporting Cancer Schmancer. I look forward to meeting you in person and us talking together to the world on these subjects that we're most passionate about. Together, with our elbows locked, we will see a new dawn. I have no doubt.
November 2nd, we'll see everybody there either in person or on the live stream.
Yes. Thank you.
There you go. One more time, sorry about the dog. I promise to guard against that sort of thing better in the future. That said, like I mentioned in the intro, I think it's good every once in a while to hear from someone that powered their way through the system and didn't let even several setbacks stop them. As always, the Cliff's Notes to everything we talked about here on the show, along with links to all resources mentioned, can be found on our website, thesternmethod.com. And for this one, you'd want to add /Fran Drescher, Drescher. And on the Buddhism thing, if that rubbed you the wrong way from a religious standpoint, I just want to emphasize, like Fran said, she practices it more as a mindfulness practice, not necessarily for taking guidance on where we came from and the laws of morality and all that. We've got an interview on meditation and mindfulness coming up in a few weeks, specifically as it pertains to cancer, which I know you're going to get a lot out of. But for now, do explore the concept of being more present in the moment if that's not a place you've gone yet. A whole lot of intangible and even tangible benefit can come of it, and the answers to some of those decisions that seemed just so hard might seem just a bit more obvious. And I also want to highlight here that, like so many of us, Fran has taken what was clearly at the time one of the worst things that ever happened to her and turned it into something fulfilling that helps others. If you're going through cancer right now, I'm not telling you to run out and start a movement this very moment. But a big theme of ours has been examining our lives, as it clearly has been with Fran, and replacing all the negative we could find with positive, and it's really what led to what I'm doing here talking to you on this show today. So I don't know, something to keep in mind. This could be for all something better and bigger and that sort of thing. That said, if you are indeed going through cancer, just keep going. I am Ryan Sternagel of The Stern Method. Thanks for listening to the Anti-Cancer Revolution, and we'll see you on the next one.